Hey guys, I'm Sam Bezek of BossStrength.com, and I'm coming at you with episode 2 of Boss Bites. And today we're going to be tackling probably one of the most controversial subjects in the health and fitness industry, and that's, will carbohydrates make you fat? So first and foremost, I just want to tell you this is my opinion based off of the evidence and based off of just my personal experience, okay? There are tons of people who love to live the low-carb lifestyle, and I'm not hating on you. I'm just trying to clarify this idea that carbohydrates will immediately make you fat, which I don't believe to be the actual case. So first and foremost, you have to understand that carbohydrates have a caloric value just like the other two macronutrients, and that's going to come out to around 4 calories per gram. So if we're going to assume that energy balance, essentially that this idea of in order to lose weight or to at least maintain weight, you have to match the amount of calories that you're consuming to the amount of calories that you're expending. Okay, so when we consider that and we consider that carbohydrates have a caloric value, it's certainly possible that when you ingest too many carbohydrates relative to your activity level or your energy requirements, that you could actually gain fat from consuming carbs. However, it's not as cut and dry as many people think. A lot of people have this misconception that the moment that they consume carbohydrate, it's automatically getting stored and then converted to triglyceride, which just really isn't the case. Okay, so when you consume carbohydrates, you have to understand that they have a specific role in the body. And just, to keep this simple, we're going to talk about just really briefly the different fates of carbohydrate. Okay, so the first thing that would probably happen when you consume a carbohydrate, if you're active, it would go directly towards fueling your activity needs. Okay, so regardless of the type of carbohydrate that you're consuming, it breaks down into glucose, and then that glucose can then enter into the blood and be used for a number of different things. And first and foremost, it would probably get broken down to produce ATP, the primary energy source of the body. Second, this is something that would happen if you've gone quite a long time without eating carbohydrates or just eating food at all, and if you were pretty active, that glucose would then go to refilling glycogen stores. Glycogen is basically the storable version of glucose, and that's found in the muscle and of course the liver. The liver is kind of like a backup plan. If say you were deserted on an island and you started to you were starving and you use up all the glycogen in your muscle, the glycogen within your liver helps to kind of stabilize blood sugar for some time. So after you consume carbs, it's either going to be used immediately, it's going to go towards refilling those glycogen stores in the muscle and the liver, and then finally, what happens is a process known as de novo lipogenesis, where this excess glucose in the body gets stored into adipose tissue and then converted into fat. So it's really important to understand that this process of de novo lipogenesis doesn't immediately happen. Okay, it's not, just I've consumed carbs and now I'm automatically gaining fat. The key is to remember that carbohydrates really are only going to contribute to fat accumulation if that means that you're consuming excess calories at the hand of those carbohydrates. So I'm not going to attest the idea that different macronutrients act differently in the body, because they do. We see that with protein. However, if you're just getting started and you're kind of confused with what's going on, you should understand that, for the most part, de novo lipogenesis is one of the last things to happen. Okay, but that's all relative to your activity level. So if you're sitting all day, if you're in an office or whatnot, it's really likely that if you're consuming, 300-400 carbs per day, that, you're actually just consuming excess calories, which happen to come from carbohydrate. Okay, and that could eventually lead to excess weight gain. So just to clarify, carbohydrates won't directly make you fat, but they definitely have the ability if you're consuming them in excess of what your body requires. So 2 real simple things that you can do. One thing that you can do, and you can do this with your calories, if you don't want to just do them with carbs, you can do what's known as like carb cycling or calorie cycling. And this is a really simple way to ensure that you're only consuming the amount of carbohydrates and thus calories that you need relative to your activity level. So if, say, you have like a really big leg workout day, or, a Metcon workout or whatever, just something that you work really hard at, or if you're very physically active during the day, it's probably safe to say that you can consume a little bit higher amount of calories and carbohydrates than, say, on days where you're primarily sitting or you're resting. So that's a really easy way. You can just manipulate your carb intake. So on days where you train a lot or you're very active, you consume your highest amount of carbs, and on days that you're not, you consume your lowest amount of carbs and thus your lowest amount of calories. Second, if you're not really interested in tracking your calories or tracking your specific carbs, you can sort of measure out your carbs just to eyeball them. So something, if you were to eat 3 meals throughout the day, with each of those meals, you could have, a cup or 2 cups, depending on how large and, how muscular you are. And then on days where you have a lighter workout day or a day that's completely rest, you scale that back to half a cup of carbs or something. It doesn't really matter, and you can manipulate this however you want. I'm just trying to paint a picture of that. That's a really simple way to manipulate the amount of energy that you're taking in on a day-to-day basis relative to your activity level, which really is going to be a key factor in whether or not carbs are actually stored and converted to fat. So I hope that this kind of clarifies what carbs do in the body, and clarifies for you that just the simple act of eating carbohydrates isn't going to directly make you fat. What I was trying to point out is that it's certainly possible, if you're sedentary and you're consuming a lot of carbs. So I hope that this helps. I hope that this clarified this issue for you. If you like this kind of content, please consider giving this video a like. And if you really like this content, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel as well as the podcast. That wraps it up for today. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.